Hello, hope you're well and welcome back if you are so. So, if you have watched my previous videos, you know I'm talking about mental health, and one thing that I really sort of focused and honed in on is the importance of the language we're using. And so, in my previous videos, I talked briefly about the language we use and how that will impact the actions we take, and ultimately that will then impact our mood and creates that vicious circle. In this video, I wanted to talk a little bit more, and I brought a few more statistics to the table to sort of emphasise the point on language. So you may or may not be aware that actually 80% of our thoughts and negative thoughts. And so just think about that for one moment. 80% of the thoughts that you have in a day, bear in mind you have around 60,000 thoughts a day. 80% of those are negative. And more on that point, 95% of those thoughts that you're having, they're repeated thoughts. So you end up in this vicious cycle of creating a real high-end anxiety in you. In fact, what you end up finding is you end up becoming your biggest critique. If you're like me, I certainly was my biggest critique, and I've become very fixated on previous mistakes that I'd made. And because of that, the thoughts that I were coming through were stopping me from taking action, because the negative thoughts that were coming in of those 60,000 were, well, don't try that because look how crap you were previously, and don't do this because you failed previously, or don't do that because... And I just found that it was very easy to get into the cycle of creating justifications to why not, rather than looking at the justification as for why I should. And so with all of that, what it really did was create a massive boost and really increase my anxiety levels to the point where I was unable to get up. As I've said previously, I couldn't get out of bed. I was being sick even though I wasn't eating. And it just really created this horrible sort of self-doubt in myself, and all the talk that I was having, all the conversations I was having with myself, both verbal and non-verbal, were really derogatory of myself, and that they weren't looking at it in any way, shape or form a positive light. I'd actually say that I was having 100% of negative thoughts. And so again, this is where I really found the importance and where the difference and how changing my language adjusted that is by looking at it for a simple lens. So when a negative thought came to myself, okay, so for example, I'm useless. Used to say that a lot. It's something that always used to come from my mind. And so somebody once told me that if your friend ever came to you and said, look, I've done really bad, or I've let myself down, or I've done this and I've done that and I shouldn't have, I'm useless, how would you respond? And I thought about that, and I thought, well, actually, I'd never turn around and degrade a friend if they're in a down position. I would always try and lift them up. So naturally, I would go towards, okay, well, yeah, you've made a mistake, but what can you do to rectify that? Or how can you go around this a different way? So A, you learn from the lesson. B, don't do it again. And C, you can almost improve the situation as a result of this. So sometimes it's looking at it from the positive point of view, and I would always do that with a friend. If a friend ever came to me and they were feeling down or they'd made mistakes, I would always say, okay, well, firstly, has anyone died? I'll be very honest, I always looked at things through a thick lens when it came to that. And then secondly, okay, well, how did it happen? What happened? What could you do differently? Why did it happen? And I'd use all these different questions to start looking at it and helping them look at it from a different light. And the moment clicked. I need to respond to myself as I'm talking to a best friend. So when those negative thoughts came through, and with myself, I wasn't very verbal. I was very, very non-verbal with my approach. You wouldn't necessarily tell. Yes, you could tell, because I looked and I carried a face that looked like it was ready to commit murder. But you wouldn't know through language that I was saying out loud. It was all internal. And so what I started to do is anytime I had a negative thought, or anytime I had that sense of of degrading or self-worth, I'd actually respond to myself and say, well, I appreciate you looking at it that way, but is that true? And I'd say it out loud. And it's funny, I could never turn around and verbally respond back and say, yes, that's true. Because the fact is, I've got children. I've got a beautiful wife. I've got amazing friends and family around me. So regardless of the situation, I have a massive amount going for me that I wasn't looking at. And so I started to look and ask myself these questions when I was going through those periods of time. So try those, try those techniques. If you are one of those people that really does degrade themselves and you're always saying a lot of negative things about yourself, try speaking to yourself out loud. Yeah, so what? People might think you're crazy, but guess what? We all are in our own weird ways. So just try it. And what I found is I can never lie to myself. I'm always going to be honest. I'm not one of those people that can just go, yeah, you're this, that, and t'other. I'll always be very honest. And so when I turn around and I ask myself out loud, but are you really worthless? Okay, well, what's going for you at the moment? What's going well at the moment? And that soon then brings me back onto the other side of the coin, because the reality is nothing's really changed that drastic in my life from today from than where I was back then. There's no real financial change. I'm not in a different house. I'm not a millionaire. There's no financial gain that's taken a burden off my anxiety. That change has come from within. That change has come as a result of a decision that I decided that no longer was I going to feel that way. And yes, don't get me wrong, since I've started to make those changes, things are now starting to go for me. Yes, still getting poor experiences and bad experiences, as we all will, but my attitude to how I go around them and negotiate them is massively different to where I was before. So, just ask yourself questions, ask yourself out loud, and respond to yourself as though you're speaking to your best friend. And I'm pretty sure if you do trial this and you work with it for a period of time and put trust in it, you might find that you start looking at yourself as a better person. And believe me, you are. Have a wonderful week ahead. Stay blessed. Love you all. Take care.